Raymond Clark pushed his cleaning cart slowly across the marble floor of the Riverside Hotel's grand ballroom. The wheels squeaked slightly, breaking the silence of the empty room. He didn't mind the sound. After 3 years of working here, these little noises had become familiar friends during his late evening shifts. At 62 years old, Raymond had cleaned this ballroom hundreds of times. He knew every corner, every window, every spot where dust liked to hide. His dark hands, rough and worn from years of hard work, moved with practiced ease as he wiped down the tables and polished the floors until they shined like mirrors. But tonight was different. Tonight, the ballroom wouldn't stay empty for long. Raymond glanced at the clock on the wall. 7:15. In 45 minutes, some big party would fill this space with rich people, fancy dresses, and expensive champagne. He needed to finish cleaning before they arrived. His supervisor had been very clear about that. As he worked his way across the room, something caught his eye. There in the corner near the tall windows sat the piano. It was a beautiful old Steinway, black and glossy, probably worth more money than Raymond would make in 5 years. The hotel kept it there for decoration mostly, though sometimes they'd hire someone to play it during special events. Raymond stopped walking. He stared at the piano for a long moment, feeling something stir deep in his chest. It had been so long, so very long. He looked around the empty ballroom. Nobody was watching. His supervisor wouldn't come back for at least 20 minutes. Before he could stop himself, Raymond walked over to the piano. His cleaning gloves felt rough and dirty, so he pulled them off carefully and set them on top of his cart. His fingers trembled slightly as he reached out and touched the smooth, black surface of the piano. It was cool under his fingertips, beautiful. Perfect. He lifted the cover protecting the keys, revealing the familiar pattern of black and white that had once been his entire world. Just one key, he told himself. Just one to hear the sound. He pressed middle C gently. The note rang out clear and pure in the empty ballroom, echoing off the high ceiling. Raymond closed his eyes and smiled. Still perfectly in tune. Well, well, well. What do we have here? Raymond's eyes snapped open. His heart jumped into his throat. A woman stood near the ballroom entrance, staring at him with a look of amused surprise on her face. She was young, maybe mid-30s, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Raymond's monthly rent. Her jewelry sparkled under the chandelier lights, and her blonde hair was styled in a way that screamed expensive salon. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Raymond said quickly, stepping back from the piano. "I was just checking if it needed dusting. I'll get back to—" No, wait," the woman said, walking into the ballroom. Her high heels clicked against the floor he'd just polished. "Were you actually about to play it?" Raymond felt his face grow warm. "No, ma'am. I was just— Oh my God, you were!" She turned and called out toward the entrance. "Honey, James, come here, you have to see this." A man in an expensive suit walked in, followed by 3 other well-dressed people. They all looked at Raymond with curious expressions. "What's going on, Victoria?" the man asked. The woman, Victoria, pointed at Raymond and laughed. "The janitor was trying to play the piano. Can you believe it?" Raymond's stomach tightened. He'd seen that look before. That mixture of amusement and condescension, like he was a child caught doing something silly. He picked up his cleaning gloves and started to move back toward his cart. Wait, don't run away," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "This is adorable. Do you actually know how to play?" "I should get back to work," Raymond said quietly. "Your party starts soon and I need to finish—" "Oh, the party can wait a few minutes," Victoria interrupted. She walked over to stand next to the piano, running her manicured fingers along its edge. "I'm serious. Can you play anything? Like maybe chopsticks or Happy Birthday?" The other guests had started to trickle into the ballroom now. They gathered around, sensing entertainment. Raymond recognized this situation. He'd been in versions of it before throughout his life. The moment when certain people decided you were less than them, decided your existence was there for their amusement. "Ma'am, I really need to—" Raymond started. "Answer the question," Victoria demanded, her tone sharper now. "Can you play or not?" Raymond stood still for a moment. He could feel all their eyes on him, judging, assuming, deciding who he was based on his uniform and his skin color and his job title. "I can play a little," he finally said. Victoria clapped her hands together and laughed. "Oh, this is perfect. James, are you recording this?" The man in the suit, apparently James, her fiancé, pulled out his phone and pointed it at Raymond. "Got it, babe?" "Excellent," Victoria said. She turned to face the growing crowd of party guests. "Everyone! Everyone gather around! We're about to have some unexpected entertainment before the actual party starts." Raymond felt sick to his stomach. He wanted to leave, to grab his cart and disappear into the service corridors where he belonged. But his feet wouldn't move. Something kept him rooted to the spot. "You know what?" Victoria said suddenly, her eyes lighting up with an idea. "Let's make this interesting. Let's make this fun." She walked right up to Raymond, so close he could smell her perfume. It was the kind that came in a tiny bottle and cost more than his weekly groceries. "Here's my offer," she announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "If you can actually play this piano, and I mean really play it, not just bang on the keys like a child, I will call off my engagement to James right now tonight in front of everyone." The crowd gasped and murmured. James looked confused, like he wasn't sure if his fiancée was joking. "That's right," Victoria continued, clearly enjoying the attention. "If this janitor can impress me with his piano playing, I'll cancel my wedding and marry him instead." The ballroom erupted in laughter. Some people pulled out their phones to record. Others shook their heads in amusement at Victoria's outrageous joke. Raymond stood there, feeling the weight of their mockery pressing down on him. Part of him wanted to walk away with whatever dignity he had left. But another part, a part he thought he'd buried years ago, felt something else. Something that tasted like anger and sadness and a strange, quiet strength. "Ma'am," Raymond said softly, his voice barely audible over the crowd's laughter. "I don't think you want to make promises you can't keep." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. There was something in his tone, in the way he stood there so calmly, that made her uncomfortable for just a second. But she pushed the feeling away. "Oh, I'm terrified," she said sarcastically. "What's wrong? Scared to take the deal? This is the opportunity of a lifetime for someone like you." Raymond looked at the piano. Then he looked at Victoria. Then he looked at all the faces in the crowd, some laughing, some curious, all of them certain they knew exactly who he was and what he was capable of. "All right," Raymond said quietly. "I accept." The laughter stopped. For a moment, the ballroom went completely silent. Victoria stared at Raymond with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe what she just heard. The guests looked at each other, confused. Nobody had expected the janitor to actually accept the challenge. "I'm sorry, what?" Victoria finally said, recovering her composure. "Did you just say yes?" "I did," Raymond replied calmly. "You made an offer. I'm accepting it, but I want to be clear about something first." He took a step closer to her, his voice steady and quiet. "When I play, I want you to honor your word. In front of all these people, in front of the cameras." James, the fiancé, let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, this has gone far enough." "Victoria, babe, let's just—" "No," Victoria interrupted, her eyes locked on Raymond. Something had changed in her expression. The amusement was gone, replaced by something harder. Something angry. "No, I want to see this. The janitor thinks he can embarrass me in front of my guests at my own engagement party." She turned to address the crowd, her voice rising. "Everyone, please, come closer. You're all witnesses to this. This man just accepted my proposal. If he can play the piano well enough to impress me, I will break off my engagement and marry him instead." More people flooded into the ballroom now, drawn by the commotion. Word had spread quickly through the hotel. Staff members peeked in through the service doors, curious about what was happening. Someone had already started a live stream on social media. Raymond could see the phone cameras pointing at him from every direction. "This is going to be legendary," James said, holding up his phone to get a better angle. "Honey, you're a genius. This is the best engagement party entertainment ever." One of Victoria's friends, a woman dripping in diamonds, giggled. "I can't wait to see what happens. Does he even know which end of the piano to sit at?" The crowd laughed again, and Victoria smiled, feeding off their energy. But Raymond noticed something else. In the back of the ballroom, near the service entrance, he saw Miguel, the young dishwasher from the hotel kitchen. Miguel wasn't laughing. He looked worried, like he wanted to help but didn't know how. Raymond gave him a small nod. "It's okay," the gesture said. "I know what I'm doing." "So, janitor," Victoria said, walking around the piano with slow, deliberate steps. "Before you make a complete fool of yourself, maybe you want to back out. I mean, it's not too late. You can just apologize, admit this was all a mistake, and go back to mopping floors. No harm done." She was giving him an out. But it wasn't kindness. Raymond could hear the mockery in her voice. She wanted him to back down, to confirm what she already believed about him, that he was nobody, that he belonged in the shadows, invisible and silent. "I don't need to back out," Raymond said. "You made a bet. Let's see if you can live with the consequences." Victoria's face flushed red. "Excuse me? Are you threatening me?" "No, ma'am," Raymond said quietly. "I'm just telling you the truth. You should be careful about making promises." James stepped forward, his expression no longer amused. "Hey, buddy, watch how you talk to her. You're just a janitor. You work for this hotel. We could have you fired with one phone call." Raymond had heard threats like this before, many times, from many people who thought their money gave them power over his life. And maybe it did. Maybe James could get him fired. Maybe Victoria could make his life difficult. But in this moment, standing in front of this piano, Raymond realized something important. He didn't care anymore. For 3 years, he'd kept his head down. He'd been invisible. He'd let people like Victoria walk past him without really seeing him. He'd accepted being treated as less than human because he needed the paycheck, because he was tired, because fighting back seemed like more trouble than it was worth. But something had broken inside him tonight. Or maybe something had finally been set free. "I'm not trying to disrespect anyone," Raymond said. "I'm just taking you up on your offer. That's all." Victoria's friend leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Victoria nodded and turned back to Raymond with a cruel smile. "Fine," she said. "Let's make this even more interesting. If you fail, when you fail, you have to get on your knees and apologize to me in front of everyone. And then you quit your job here tonight, deal?" The crowd gasped. This was getting out of hand and everyone knew it. But nobody stopped her. They were all too caught up in the drama, too entertained by the spectacle. James looked uncomfortable for a moment. "Victoria, maybe we should deal?" Victoria repeated, ignoring her fiancé. She held out her hand toward Raymond, waiting for him to shake it. Raymond looked at her hand. He thought about his daughter, Lisa, who was finishing her residency at a hospital in Boston. She'd worked so hard to become a doctor. He'd worked so hard to help her get there. What would she think if she saw him right now? Would she be proud? Would she be embarrassed? No. Lisa would tell him to stand up for himself. She'd always been strong like that. Raymond shook Victoria's hand. Her grip was firm, competitive. She squeezed hard, like even this was a contest she needed to win. "Deal," Raymond said. The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Phones were everywhere now, recording every moment. Raymond could see the view counter climbing on one of the live streams. Hundreds of people were watching. Soon it would be thousands. Raymond turned away from Victoria and walked slowly to the piano. He pulled out the bench, the legs scraping slightly against the polished floor. He sat down carefully, adjusting the height. His heart was pounding in his chest, but his hands were steady. Behind him, he could hear Victoria holding court with her friends. "This is hilarious," she said loudly, making sure he could hear. "He's probably going to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with 2 fingers. I give him 10 seconds before he gives up," someone else said. "Maybe he'll surprise us and know Mary had a little lamb." Another voice joked. The laughter washed over him like a wave, but Raymond didn't turn around. He looked down at the keys, black and white, perfectly arranged. 88 keys, each one a voice. Together they could create something beautiful, or they could create chaos. It all depended on the hands that touched them. Raymond placed his cleaning gloves on top of the piano, right where everyone could see them. A reminder of who he was in their eyes. Just a janitor. Just someone who cleaned up their messes. Then he lifted his hands and held them over the keys, not quite touching. His fingers spread naturally into position, muscle memory from decades ago clicking into place like a key in a lock. The ballroom grew quieter. Something in Raymond's posture had changed. The way he held himself at the piano didn't match the image of a nervous janitor about to fail. He looked comfortable, natural, like he belonged there. Victoria noticed it too. Her smile faltered slightly. "Well?" she called out, trying to regain control of the moment. "We're waiting." "Play something, unless you've changed your mind." Raymond closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, pulling air deep into his lungs, the way his teacher had shown him 40 years ago. "Let the breath center you," Professor Chen used to say. "Let it connect your heart to your hands." He thought about his late wife, Teresa, and how she used to sit in the front row of every performance, tears in her eyes because she was so proud of him. He thought about the night she got sick, The moment the doctor told them it was cancer, the choice he'd made to give up everything so she wouldn't face it alone. He thought about all the years since then, all the silence, all the music locked inside him waiting. Behind him, someone whispered, "Why isn't he playing? Is he frozen? He's scared," another voice said. Raymond's lips curved into a small smile even though his eyes were still closed. "No," he thought. "I'm not scared. I'm remembering." And then, finally, his fingers descended to the keys. The first note rang out across the ballroom, clear and strong and absolutely perfect. It was followed by another, and then Raymond's hands began to move, and the entire world disappeared except for the music. The first few notes floated through the ballroom like whispers. Soft, gentle, almost hesitant, like a person telling a secret they'd kept for too long. Someone in the crowd started to laugh, but the sound died in their throat, because what came next wasn't funny at all. Raymond's fingers began to dance across the keys with a grace that seemed impossible. His right hand carried the melody, while his left hand created a foundation of deep, rich chords that filled the entire room. The music wasn't just sound. It was alive. It breathed. It had a heartbeat. He was playing Chopin, Nocturne in C-sharp minor, one of the most beautiful and technically difficult pieces ever written. Victoria's smile disappeared completely. She stood frozen, her champagne glass halfway to her lips, staring at Raymond's back with an expression of pure shock. James lowered his phone slightly, his mouth hanging open. The guests who'd been laughing and chatting just moments ago fell silent, one by one like candles being snuffed out. The only sound in the entire ballroom was the piano, singing under Raymond's hands. Miguel, the dishwasher, stood near the service entrance with tears already streaming down his face. He'd worked alongside Raymond for 2 years and never knew, never suspected. How could he have known that the quiet man who mopped floors and took out trash could create something so achingly beautiful? Raymond's eyes remained closed as he played. His body swayed slightly with the music, his shoulders rising and falling with each phrase. 40 years melted away. He wasn't in the Riverside Hotel anymore. He was 22 again, performing at his graduation recital. He was 25, playing his first professional concert. He was 28, performing at Carnegie Hall while Teresa watched from the audience with her hands pressed to her heart. The music filled every corner of the ballroom, seeping into the walls, climbing up to the chandelier, wrapping around every person present. It wasn't just technically perfect, though, it was that. Every note was exactly where it needed to be. Every trill crisp and clear, every dynamic shift executed with absolute precision. But that wasn't what made people start to cry. It was the emotion. The soul Raymond poured into every measure. You could hear pain in those notes. Loss. Loneliness. But also love. So much love. And hope, fragile but persistent like a flower growing through concrete. One of Victoria's friends, the woman in diamonds, sank slowly into a nearby chair. She wasn't laughing anymore. Mascara started to run down her cheeks, black tears she didn't bother to wipe away. An older gentleman in the back of the room, a hotel guest who'd wandered in to see what the commotion was about, stood perfectly still with his hand over his mouth. His eyes were wide with recognition and disbelief. Raymond transitioned seamlessly from Chopin into another piece. Rachmaninoff, the prelude in G minor, even more difficult, even more intense. His hands moved so fast they became a blur, flying up and down the keyboard with impossible speed and accuracy. The music built and built, waves of sound crashing over the audience, pulling them under, making them feel things they'd forgotten they could feel. Victoria stumbled backward, nearly dropping her glass. A hotel staff member rushed forward to catch it before it fell. Victoria didn't even notice. She was staring at Raymond like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." James stood next to her, his phone now hanging limply at his side. The recording was still running, but he'd forgotten about it. He couldn't look away from the man at the piano. None of them could. The music shifted again. It became softer now, more introspective. Raymond was playing something different, something most of them didn't recognize, because it wasn't a famous piece by a dead composer. It was his own, something he'd written years ago but never performed for anyone except Teresa. It was a love song. A goodbye. A thank you. A prayer. The melody was simple at first. Just a few notes repeated and varied, like a person trying to find the right words to say something important. Then it grew more complex, layers of harmony building on top of each other, creating something rich and full and devastating. People weren't just crying now. They were sobbing, quietly, trying not to make noise but unable to stop the tears, because the music was breaking something open inside them. All their walls, all their pretenses, all the armor they wore to get through their daily lives. The older gentleman in the back finally moved. He pushed through the crowd, getting closer to the piano. His face had gone pale. "It can't be," he muttered. "It's impossible." A woman next to him grabbed his arm. What's impossible?" "That's Raymond Clark," the man said, his voice shaking. Raymond Clark. He was supposed to be one of the greats. He performed at Carnegie Hall, he was featured in the New York Times, and then he just disappeared. This was almost 40 years ago. "I thought he was dead." The woman looked confused. "Who?" "He was a prodigy," the man continued, speaking louder now. Other people were starting to listen. Graduated from Juilliard at the top of his class. Everyone said he'd be the next great American pianist. Critics called him a genius. And then, right when his career was taking off, he vanished. Nobody knew what happened to him. Victoria heard this. She turned to look at the old man, her face completely white. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Raymond Clark," the man repeated, pointing at the figure at the piano. "That's Raymond Clark. I saw him perform in 1985 at Carnegie Hall. Best concert I've ever been to in my life. I never forgot it. I never forgot him." The music continued, building toward something. Raymond's entire body was involved now, leaning into the keys for the powerful moments, pulling back for the soft ones. Sweat gleamed on his forehead. His fingers never missed a note, never hesitated. 40 years away from the concert stage, and his muscle memory was still perfect. The music was still inside him, as much a part of him as his heartbeat. James looked at Victoria. "Did you know? Did you have any idea?" Victoria couldn't speak. She just shook her head slowly, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. All around them, the guests were putting pieces together. Phones came back out, but not to mock anymore. People were frantically searching. Raymond Clark, pianist. Raymond Clark, Carnegie Hall. Raymond Clark disappeared. Articles popped up. Old reviews. A few grainy photos from concerts in the 1980s. A young Raymond, barely in his 20s, sitting at a piano in a tuxedo, smiling at the camera with joy in his eyes. "He was famous," someone whispered. "He was actually famous." "And we were laughing at him," another voice said, thick with shame. The music reached its climax. Raymond's hands crashed down on the keys, pulling out a massive chord that shook the room. Then another. The piece was building to its conclusion, the melody reaching upward, stretching toward something beautiful and painful and true. And then, slowly, it began to fade. The music grew softer, quieter, like a candle burning down to its last flicker. Raymond's hands slowed, playing the final phrases with infinite gentleness. Each note was like a goodbye, like a kiss on a sleeping child's forehead, like the last words you say to someone you love before they leave. The final note hung in the air, sustained by the piano's natural resonance, gradually fading until the ballroom was silent once more. Raymond's hands remained on the keys for a long moment. He kept his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths. The room stayed completely quiet, like everyone was afraid to break the spell. Then, slowly, Raymond lifted his hands from the piano. He opened his eyes. He sat up straight and looked down at the keys, saying a silent goodbye to them once again. Behind him, the ballroom remained frozen in silence, and then, from the back of the room, someone started to clap. It was the old man, the one who'd recognized Raymond. He clapped slowly at first, then faster. His applause echoed through the ballroom like thunder. Another person joined in, then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Not polite applause, not the kind of clapping you do because you're supposed to. This was real, powerful. People were clapping so hard their hands hurt. Standing up from their seats, some of them still crying, all of them trying to express something that words couldn't capture. The sound was deafening. Raymond slowly stood up from the piano bench. He turned to face the crowd, and for the first time they really saw him. Not a janitor, not a servant. Just a man who'd poured his soul out through music and left them all changed. Victoria stood in the center of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. her carefully applied makeup ruined. She looked at Raymond, and for the first time that evening she really saw him too, and she was terrified. The applause continued for what felt like forever. People were standing, clapping until their palms turned red, some of them shouting "Bravo!" like they were at the opera. Hotel staff had crowded into the doorways, abandoning their posts to witness what was happening. Even the hotel manager stood in the back, his face showing complete confusion about what he'd just witnessed. Raymond stood quietly near the piano, his hands hanging at his sides. He didn't bow. He didn't smile or wave or acknowledge the applause the way a performer normally would. He just stood there looking tired and somehow smaller than he had while playing, like the music had taken something vital out of him. The old man who'd recognized him pushed through the crowd. He was crying openly now, not caring who saw. When he reached Raymond, he grabbed both of his hands. "Mr. Clark," the man said, his voice breaking, "I saw you perform in 1985 Carnegie Hall. You played Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. My daughter had just died that year and I was drowning in grief. Your music, it saved me that night. It gave me a reason to keep going." Raymond's eyes grew wet. He squeezed the man's hands gently. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you for telling me that. What happened to you?" the man asked. "Where did you go? The whole classical music world was looking for you. You were supposed to be the next great pianist, and then you just vanished." Before Raymond could answer, more people pressed forward. The woman in diamonds approached, her face streaked with mascara. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry for laughing at you. I didn't know. I didn't understand." Others echoed her apology. "We're sorry. Please forgive us. We were wrong." Raymond held up his hand, asking for quiet. Slowly, the crowd settled. The applause faded. Everyone waited to hear what he would say. "You don't need to apologize," Raymond said. His voice was quiet but clear. "You didn't know who I was. But that's exactly the point, isn't it?" He looked around at all the faces watching him. Rich people, successful people, people who'd come to this hotel expecting an elegant party and instead got something they'd never forget. "I want to tell you a story," Raymond said. "In 1987, I was 28 years old. I'd just performed at Carnegie Hall for the third time. The New York Times called me a genius. I had concert bookings for the next 2 years. Record labels were fighting over me. I was living the dream." He paused, his jaw tightening. "And then my wife Teresa got sick, cancer, stage 4. The doctor said she had maybe a year, probably less. We had a daughter, Lisa. She was only 5 years old." The ballroom was silent except for Raymond's voice. "I had a choice to make," he continued. "I could keep touring, keep building my career and let Teresa's family take care of her while I traveled the world playing piano. Or I could stay, be there for every doctor's appointment, every treatment, every hard night. Be there for my daughter when she didn't understand why her mother was getting sicker." Raymond's voice grew thick with emotion. It wasn't even really a choice. "I canceled everything. Every concert, every recording session. I told my agent I was done. He thought I was crazy. He said I was throwing away a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And he was right. I was." A woman in the crowd let out a small sob. "Teresa lived for 2 more years, not 1. 2 years where I got to hold her hand every day. 2 years where I could make her laugh even when she was in pain. 2 years where my daughter got to have both her parents together. And when Teresa finally passed, I was there, holding her hand. That was worth more than Carnegie Hall, more than fame, more than anything." Raymond wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "After she died, I needed to raise Lisa alone. She was 7 years old and heartbroken. I couldn't travel for concerts. I couldn't spend 12 hours a day practicing. So I took whatever jobs I could find. I drove a taxi for a while, worked in a warehouse, eventually ended up here cleaning floors. And you know what? I don't regret it." "Not for a second," he smiled slightly. "Lisa graduated from medical school 3 years ago. She's a doctor now, saving lives. She's happy. She's successful. She turned out to be an amazing woman. That's my real masterpiece, not any concert I ever played. Her." The old man who'd seen him perform was crying again. "You gave up everything," he whispered. "No," Raymond said firmly. "I gave up fame. That's not everything. I had love. I had my daughter. I had purpose. And I had music. Just because I wasn't performing doesn't mean I stopped playing." Every night after Lisa went to bed, I'd sit at our old keyboard with headphones on and play for hours. The music never left me. It just became private, personal, mine. Victoria stood near the front of the crowd, her face completely destroyed by tears and shame. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Raymond turned to look at her directly for the first time since he'd finished playing. "Miss Sterling," he said gently, "you made a promise in front of all these people." Victoria flinched like he'd slapped her. The crowd held its breath. "You said if I could play the piano, you'd break off your engagement and marry me instead," Raymond continued. James stepped forward protectively, standing next to Victoria, but Raymond held up his hand. "I need you to understand something," Raymond said. "I would never hold you to that promise. I don't want to marry you. I don't even know you. And honestly, after tonight, I don't think I'd want to." Victoria let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "But I do want something from you," Raymond said, his voice growing stronger. "I want you to remember this moment for the rest of your life. I want you to remember that the man you mocked, the man you treated like he was less than human, once played for presidents and kings. I want you to remember that the person cleaning your floor might have once been on magazine covers, that the woman serving your coffee might be a published poet, that the delivery driver might have a PhD in physics." He took a step toward her. "Every single person you meet has a story, has dignity, has worth. Not because of what they've accomplished or how much money they make, but because they're human. Do you understand?" Victoria nodded, unable to speak. "The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was," Raymond said. "The problem is that it shouldn't matter. You should have treated me with respect when you thought I was just a janitor who couldn't play a single note. That's what I want you to learn from tonight." The crowd was completely silent. Several people looked ashamed, recognizing themselves in Raymond's words. James suddenly reached up and pulled off his engagement ring. The gesture was so unexpected that several people gasped. He looked at Victoria with an expression of deep sadness. "I can't do this," James said quietly. "I can't marry someone who treats people this way, Victoria. I've watched you be cruel before. I've seen you be dismissive to waiters, rude to staff, condescending to people you think are beneath you. I always made excuses for it. But tonight I saw who you really are." He placed the ring in her hand. "If Mr. Clark hadn't been extraordinary, you never would have apologized. You would have humiliated him and felt good about it. That's what makes this so terrible. You only care because you got caught, because he turned out to be someone important." Victoria stared at the ring in her palm like she didn't recognize it. "You can change," James said. "I really hope you do. But I can't be part of your life while you're like this." He turned to Raymond. "Sir, I'm sorry for my part in this. I recorded you to mock you. I was as guilty as anyone here." "You deserved better." Raymond nodded. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after we realize we've made them." James walked toward the exit. Several of Victoria's friends followed him, distancing themselves from her. Within moments, the party that was supposed to celebrate Victoria's engagement had completely fallen apart. Victoria stood alone in the center of the ballroom, still holding the ring, tears streaming down her face. She looked up at Raymond with desperate eyes. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "How do I fix this?" Raymond looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked over and picked up his cleaning gloves from the top of the piano. "You start," he said, "by learning to see people." Raymond walked slowly back to his cleaning cart. His legs felt heavy like he'd just run a marathon. The adrenaline that had carried him through the performance was fading now, leaving him exhausted. He picked up his cart handle, ready to push it toward the service exit and disappear back into the world where he belonged. "Wait," a voice called out. "Please wait." Raymond turned. The hotel manager, Mr. Peterson, was hurrying toward him. Behind him, the old man who'd recognized Raymond from Carnegie Hall followed closely. "Mr. Clark," the manager said, slightly out of breath, "you can't just leave. Do you have any idea what just happened here?" Raymond looked confused. "I played the piano. That's what she asked me to do. That's not—" Mr. Peterson shook his head. "Sir, everyone in this room recorded what just happened. It's already online. It's already spreading." The old man held up his phone. "He's right. The live stream had over 50,000 viewers by the end. The video's been shared thousands of times already. People are searching your name. They're finding your old performances, your old reviews. Mr. Clark, the world is about to remember who you are." Raymond felt a strange flutter in his chest. Fear, hope? He wasn't sure. I don't understand what that means. It means, Mr. Peterson said carefully, that your life is about to change. Again. He was right. By the next morning, the video had been viewed millions of times. Not just the performance, but everything. Victoria's cruel challenge. Raymond's quiet acceptance. The stunning reveal of who he really was. His explanation about why he'd given up everything. James breaking off the engagement. All of it. The internet did what the internet does. Some people praised Raymond's dignity and talent. Others criticized Victoria harshly, calling her terrible names and digging up everything they could find about her company and her life. Some called for her to be canceled. Others defended her, saying everyone makes mistakes. But the most common response was simply awe. Millions of people watched a 62-year-old janitor sit at a piano and play like an angel, and they felt something change inside them. Comment sections filled with stories. People shared their own experiences of being dismissed, overlooked, treated as invisible. I'm a truck driver, but I have a master's degree in literature. I work at a grocery store, but I used to be a professional dancer before my injury. I clean houses for a living, but I speak 5 languages. The video became more than just entertainment. It became a mirror that made people look at how they treated others, how they judged, how they assumed. Raymond's phone, which rarely rang except for calls from Lisa, suddenly wouldn't stop buzzing. News outlets wanted interviews. Concert halls reached out asking if he'd consider performing. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell his story. A book publisher offered him a deal to write his memoir. Lisa called him, crying with joy. Dad, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were special, but now the whole world knows too. I'm still just me, Raymond told her. I'm still your dad who tells bad jokes and burns toast. You're my dad who sacrificed everything for Mom and me, Lisa said. And now you get a second chance. You have to take it, Dad. Please, Mom would want you to. Raymond sat in his small apartment looking at all the messages and offers piling up. He felt overwhelmed, scared, but also, for the first time in decades, he felt something else. Excitement, a tiny spark of possibility. Meanwhile, Victoria's world was crumbling. Her company's stock dropped as investors worried about negative publicity. Her friends stopped calling. Strangers recognized her on the street and yelled cruel things. She had to hire security because of threats. But something strange happened in the midst of all that destruction. Victoria started to actually think about what Raymond had said. Really think about it. She looked back at her life and didn't like what she saw. She'd been raised with money, had always had power, had never really struggled for anything. And somewhere along the way, she'd started believing that made her better than other people. That her success meant she had permission to look down on those who hadn't achieved the same things. She'd been wrong. 2 weeks after that night, Victoria did something that surprised everyone. She released a video statement, not written by lawyers or PR professionals, just her sitting in her apartment looking tired and real. I can't undo what I did, she said to the camera. I can't take back the cruelty I showed Mr. Clark, or the cruelty I've shown countless other people throughout my life. I've been thinking a lot about why I acted that way. I think it's because I was empty inside. I built my whole identity around being successful and important. And when you do that, you need other people to be less than you. You need to put them down to feel elevated. She paused, wiping tears from her eyes. I'm stepping down from my position as CEO. I'm going to spend the next year working regular jobs. Not as a publicity stunt, not to rehabilitate my image, but because I need to understand what life is like for people I've spent my whole life looking down on. I need to learn empathy. I need to become a better human being. The internet didn't know what to make of it. Some people thought it was genuine. Others thought it was just another manipulation. But Victoria didn't seem to care either way. She actually did it. She got a job waiting tables at a diner, then working at a homeless shelter, then volunteering at a community center. It was hard, humbling. People recognized her and some were cruel. But slowly, gradually, something in Victoria started to change. She started seeing people, really seeing them, and she started understanding what Raymond had tried to teach her that night. 6 months after the ballroom incident, Raymond gave his first concert in 40 years. It was at a small theater in Boston, not Carnegie Hall. Lisa sat in the front row just like her mother used to. Miguel from the hotel was there too. So was Mr. Peterson. So were dozens of people who'd seen the video and wanted to witness this moment in person. Raymond walked onto the stage in a simple black suit. His hair was grayer now, his face more lined. But when he sat at the piano, the years fell away. He played for 2 hours straight. Old classics. New compositions. Music that made people laugh and cry and remember why being human was such a strange and beautiful gift. At the end of the concert, Raymond stood to take a bow. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. And there, in the back row, standing and clapping with tears on her face, was Victoria. She'd bought a ticket under a different name. She didn't try to go backstage or talk to Raymond. She just wanted to hear him play again, to witness the beauty that she'd almost destroyed with her cruelty. After the concert, Raymond packed up his sheet music. Lisa came backstage and hugged him tight. "You were amazing, Dad." "Thank you, sweetheart. Your mother would have loved this." "She's here," Lisa said. "I feel her. She's so proud of you." Raymond smiled. "I'm proud of me too. Not because I played well tonight, but because I made the right choice 40 years ago. Everything else is just bonus. The story could have ended there, but it didn't because real stories never really end. They just continue in ways we don't always see." Raymond went on to perform in concert halls around the world, but he never forgot where he'd been. He started a foundation to help artists who'd had to give up their dreams for family or financial reasons. He gave scholarships to students who showed talent but couldn't afford training. Victoria kept working regular jobs for a full year, like she'd promised. Then she started a nonprofit organization focused on workers' rights and fair treatment of service employees. She used her business skills and connections for good this time. She never forgot the night a janitor taught her the most important lesson of her life. Miguel eventually became the head chef at a prestigious restaurant. He always told people that watching Raymond that night taught him that you should never let anyone make you feel small, no matter what job you're doing. And that video, it never stopped circulating. Every few months it would go viral again. New people would discover it and share it with the caption, "Remember that everyone has a story." Years later, a young woman working as a cashier at a grocery store had a customer snap at her for being too slow. The customer started to berate her, making her feel worthless. But then another customer stepped in. "Excuse me," the second customer said firmly. "You don't know her story. You don't know what she's capable of. You don't know what she's been through. Treat her with respect." The rude customer, embarrassed, mumbled an apology and left. The cashier looked at the person who'd defended her with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Nobody's ever stood up for me like that." The defender smiled. "I saw a video once about a janitor and a piano. It taught me that everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves respect. No matter what, that's how change happens. Not all at once. Not with one viral video or one moment of awakening, but slowly, person by person, interaction by interaction, one act of kindness inspiring another, one moment of dignity recognized inspiring someone else to recognize it too." Raymond never set out to teach the world a lesson. He just wanted to honor a promise to the woman he loved and give his daughter the best life he could. But in doing so, he reminded millions of people of something they'd forgotten, that worth isn't measured by job titles or bank accounts, that everyone you meet is carrying invisible burdens and hidden gifts, that the person you dismiss today might be extraordinary in ways you can't imagine, and that,